And we're off now once again with Massachusetts Senate Minority Leader Bruce Tarr. And Senator Tarr, as we sit here, both of us sort of in West Gloucester, there's thunder all about us, but there's no rain.
You know, Rick, I'm a little disappointed because there's a lot of thunder and there's even been a few flashes of lightning. I don't know if you're able to see them out the window
Yes.
in the studio, but I've been in great anticipation for the last 20 or 30 minutes that the clouds are going to open up and we were going to get some desperately needed rain. But it's a little frustrating that we've had some of the effects, but not the rain yet.
My daughter and her husband came home from a visit up in North Conway about an hour ago, and I went outside to help them bring stuff in, and I actually got a sprinkle on me. But that was it. It was a sprinkle.
Yeah, it's as if we're getting the advertising, but we're not getting the product.
Amen.
So
Amen.
I hope that that's going to change here shortly. I just took a quick look at the radar on my phone, and it does seem like we're going to get some rainfall, but I haven't seen much yet.
Okay, Senator, we're in a sort of a break here. You explained it last week, but I need to know a little bit more information about what the role of the legislature is between now and after the election, because I know it's slowed down a bit. And just explain that to me, please.
So, you know, it's a good question, Rick, and you use the right term. It has slowed down, but it has not stopped. So the Massachusetts Constitution requires us to meet every 72 hours. So for the most part in the Senate, that means that we meet on Mondays and Thursdays. And we meet in something called an informal session. And this is very important. So in an informal session, there is generally one member of each party. And oftentimes the presiding officer is the member of the majority party. Many, many times I'm the member of the minority party. But anyone can come to an informal session, but they're usually not well attended. But importantly, any member can prevent something from being considered in an informal session. So one way to think about it is that informal sessions are really governed by consensus. If there's disagreement, the session can be stopped and a particular matter won't be taken up. But that's still important, Rick, because we have a lot of routine business to transact. So for instance, oftentimes in formal sessions, we're processing a lot of home rule petitions where a community has asked us for something that they're required to by either the Constitution or the general laws, and we're acting on those matters so that we can move them along, and those communities don't have to wait until the next legislative session. Importantly, anything that requires a roll call cannot be taken up in an informal session because the members aren't there necessarily, and we can't do a roll call. Again, generally it's considered that roll calls are off limits in informal sessions. So that means some types of things can't be taken up. So for instance, if we are going to bond something, if we're going to pass a bill that authorizes bonded indebtedness on behalf of the Commonwealth, that requires a roll call vote at the enactment stage. So we can't do it. Similarly, if there's a bill that involves so-called Article 97, which is a provision that relates to the transfer of open space to be used for something other than open space under certain conditions, that requires a roll call vote, and those matters can't be taken up. But a great many matters can. And a great case in point, Rick, is that right now, we have not closed the books for the prior fiscal year, the one that concluded on June 30th of this past summer. And we need to pass legislation to close the books because, as you know, we have a substantial surplus and we have to account for that money. And usually the way that's done is with a supplemental budget. In this case, it's often known as a final closeout supplemental budget because it closes the books for the fiscal year and in one way or another deals with the money that is remaining at the close of the fiscal year. Now, this year is different than most fiscal years because we have such an enormous surplus. And you may recall that we concluded the formal legislative session without coming to agreement on a tax cut package that would spend some of that money and on some other spending items that would have spent a lot of the money. So that surplus right now is even bigger. And you've heard discussions about us maybe coming back to formal session to deal with issues like that. So far, there's been no action on that front. But yesterday, Governor Baker made an announcement that when he files that closeout supplemental budget, he's going to include a provision for some $40 million in funding for school safety. In the wake of the shootings that we've seen around the country, the governor feels, and I agree, that we could do better in terms of making sure our schools have the resources to be able to prevent school shootings and, God forbid, to be able to address one if it should occur. So right now, that's a major initiative that the governor is going to file as part of that closeout SUP. And if we can find consensus, we may be able to take action on it. So it's a bit of a problem to say, well, right now in informal session, nothing happens. Because in this informal session, the one that will now run until January of next year, a lot could happen, and a lot needs to happen because we need to close the books on the past fiscal year.
Okay, for that security, safety security for schools to come to fruition, what has to be done? Does the governor have the power to institute that just by decree?
He does not. This is a spending item, and so he cannot spend that money unless we approve it in the supplemental budget. Mm-hmm. And so he's putting it on the table as part of the closeout SUP. We haven't seen the bill yet, Rick. We hope to see it soon. But it's certainly something that's important. And I would say it's important to every member of the legislature. So it could be the type of thing that gets passed in an informal session.
Okay, thanks. Takes me a while, but I know you said a lot of that stuff. Anyway, I appreciate it. That's good. It's the football thing. I'm looking for the Patriots tonight, so I'm not. But thank you. Okay, before we get to an event in Gloucester that you attended, I presume, I have to ask you sort of an off-the-wall question, and that is, at this time of year, usually you call it silly season for elections, but we read in the paper the Globe endorses this guy. We read that the governor endorses this woman. What's the role of endorsement? What does that mean, Senator? You've been through many elections, and what's the importance of an endorsement?
Well, that's a pretty loaded political question, Rick. But I would say that there are a lot of different opinions on the value of endorsements. To me, the most important thing is the candidate and not the endorsement. And I think most people vote based upon the qualifications and experience of a candidate and their feeling about that individual. And it seems to me that endorsements, particularly early on in a candidacy, may play a role in helping someone establish credibility or visibility because someone else has said, this is someone that I think you should consider. But I think ultimately, when the curtain closes behind us all at the ballot box, I think the decision is much more about the candidate than an endorsement.
Very good. Not far from your home in Gloucester is the famous boulevard with a couple of tremendous memorials to fishermen and fishermen wives. There's also a cannon sitting on the boulevard right now. Tell me about it.
Well, there is now, Rick, and I think that's something that everyone should be proud of. And this is a very interesting story. So last night, we were all brought to the boulevard for a ceremony that was organized by Karen Tibbetts, who is well known in the community as someone who does a lot of things that are projects that benefit the community. And this event was, in many ways, a prelude to a lot of the events that we're going to see for the city's 400th anniversary celebration coming next year. This particular one was unique. So it goes back to 1931, when the USS Constitution actually visited Gloucester. And before they left, they gave a cannon to the city. And it's a replica cannon of a cannon that had been on Constitution. And the cannon had fallen into disrepair. And a group of folks got together and decided that with the 400th anniversary coming, it would be a wonderful thing to restore that cannon. Now, the effort was led by David Dow, who I am told is in his 90s. And he did a phenomenal job of restoring this cannon with a lot of help. I didn't get a chance to see it in its state prior to David's involvement, but it certainly looks wonderful now. And David actually got his license through the state fire marshal to fire cannons. So he could actually bring a project like this to fruition, although this particular cannon will not be fired. It's a replica. But there are others that he is working on. And I was very pleased to connect him with the Wilmington Company of Minutemen, where there are several licensed cannoneers that helped him get his license. And in fact, Rick, as we may have talked about, I'm a member of the Wilmington Minutemen, and I'm very, very proud to be so. But tonight, or last night rather, was a dedication ceremony where the cannon now is in its permanent location on the boulevard. And it was a chance to thank everybody that's been involved, Brett and Max Ramsey, certainly David Dow, lots of other people that have been involved in the restoration of this cannon. And for me, it was a real way to celebrate the role that the Port of Gloucester has played in the history of the United States. And what I said last night is that if you look at our beautiful harbor, many people have left that harbor to be able to make sacrifice and endure hardship to feed this nation, to be able to harvest from the sea the protein products that are so nutritious for the people of our country. But they've also left to defend this nation. And so thinking about our linkage to Constitution and the fact that she has actually visited Gloucester is a very special part of our heritage. And to have this gift from USS Constitution be brought back to life is a remarkable thing. And it was a great source of pride, I think, for the entire city to see that cannon dedicated, and dedicated because of the work of some very, very committed individuals.
Well, I am a former cannoneer on a 105 millimeter howitzer, and the lack of hearing in this ear is proof to that. But it's a replica, but it's a replica that was presented by the ship itself. Is that correct?
That's correct. And by the way, Rick, I don't want to miss an opportunity to thank you for that service. But it was a cannon that was brought to Gloucester Harbor by USS Constitution. And of course, you may remember that there was an attempt for the last anniversary that the city celebrated to have Constitution visit the Port of Gloucester once again. And that didn't quite work out, but I'm told that there are discussions underway about maybe having it happen.
Ooh, okay. I was a participant in that one in 1973. And we did fire howitzers from Stage Fort, and the return volley from the Navy ship was from rifles, and it was a little disappointing after we fired our cannons. But one other thing, Senator, I learned that in studying Gloucester's history, where the old Coast Guard station used to be in a little jetty or a cutaway in the harbor, further out from the harbor, past I think it's past Hammond Castle, I'm not sure, but this where the old Coast Guard station used to be. Gloucester and Beverly privateers actually captured a British warship with more munitions on it than any other ship, and it took, I guess, the Washington sent troops to Gloucester to offload the munitions, and it took them something like 3 or 4 days, and it was one of the most amazing feats of the war by Gloucester and Beverly privateers. And there were picket ships from the British going up and down outside the harbor, and they didn't see it. They couldn't find it. So, a real tribute to Gloucester and Beverly men.
Well, Rick, we live in an incredibly historic part of this country. And that's just one more example of the role that we have played, particularly in the earliest days of this nation. And again, that's why it was so special last night to be able to have so many pieces come together. The history of Constitution, the history of Gloucester as a seaport, this gift that was given to us in 1931, and this gift that was given to us again by David Dow in the restoration.
As always, well-spoken, Senator. I'm not going to see you next week because we are going off for the Labor Day weekend, so we'll see you in 2 weeks.
We look forward to it, Rick, and I hope you have a restful and a wonderful Labor Day weekend, and we'll look forward to picking up our conversation after that.